りなく広いアリーナで歌声が高く遠く響く心の傷ついた人も笑顔取り戻すパワーを与えてみせる裏腹を休むこともなく泳ぎ続ける魚未来にどこまで旅しても平気疲れも知らない止まるよりも進むのが好き可能性信じて挑まなきゃそう何も始まらない一度や二度の失敗軽く流してリスタート誰からも知られ愛される存在になる道を選んで苦労は絶えないけれども後悔してない毎日が楽しいから新しい自分をいつでも見せながら成長していくよまだまだ伸びると信じて今日も頑張れるエンドレスな向上心で旅に出てみたい気分ぼやぼやしてると大切なチャンス逃してしまいそう輝いたステージに立てば最高の気分を味わえる全てが報われる瞬間いつまでも続け夢なら覚めないでいてお空を飛ぶ鳥のように翼を広げて羽ばたき Hello Oh, it's restarting. Hold up. I'll be a little quieter. Wow. Anyway, I'm gonna be drawing, and I'm gonna be listening to the Danganronpa 0 audiobook. So, Feel free to listen along with me while I draw. Thanks.
This dazzling light beat down on the pavement outside the dormitory so brightly I couldn't help but squint my eyes, though it wasn't strong enough to feel it on my skin. In fact, I even shivered a little as the chilly wind ran past me. Despite all this, I felt relaxed and stress-free as I sat down on a nearby bench and let out a deep sigh. Ah, what a peaceful day. I wanted to shout my thoughts out to the wind. I tilted my head to the side suddenly. Huh? Wasn't there somewhere I needed to go? I took Ryoko Odanashi's memory notebook out of my backpack and opened it up so I could verify what it was I was supposed to do, but my hand suddenly stopped. By chance, the page I opened my notebook to was covered by a drawing of a man. My heart thumped a little faster. Matsuda? I couldn't spot any differences between the picture and the real thing, but my heart was only beating a little faster. Perhaps it's not really all that similar after all. I guess if I change it a little, it'll look more like him? It wasn't that I couldn't remember Matsuda's face. I just needed to use my heartbeat in place of my memory. Maybe it's the eyes, or perhaps the mouth, I thought to myself as I drew. After some time, my heart was almost pounding like it would in front of the real thing. Yup, that's probably more similar. I patiently examined it as I gazed at it. Matsuda, Matsuda, Matsuda. I repeated his name in my mind. See? My heart's pounding. My heart beated harder as I brought the portrait closer to my face. As I drew more, it made the feeling stronger. I don't think I'm perverted or anything like that, but I didn't want to kiss it in just a non-sexual way. I suddenly tilted my head to the side. Huh? Wasn't there somewhere I needed to go? With that in mind, I bid farewell to Matsuda's picture and began flipping through my notebook. After turning through the pages for a short while, I finally remembered. At the same time, I could feel my mood take a dramatic drop. I don't know why exactly, but my whole body began to tremble. I remembered that ridiculous murderer's confession. That's right. Junko and Ashima also told me her purposes that time. Kill your beloved darling, Yasuke Matsuda. She said, even if I don't remember, I'm still involved. I was still trembling. She couldn't be right. I should quickly warn Matsuda of the crisis he's in. I need to go to the biology building in the East District. That's where Matsuda's neurology research is. I have no time to lose. I jumped up from the bench and started to sprint with all my strength. Right now it was either break time or lunchtime and the school was crowded with students outdoors. I pushed past people as I ran at full speed across the pavement. Of course, people I pushed past would scream and cry things like "Wah!" and "Kya!" but I didn't care. Anyway, I was running across the pavement, leaving my thoughts behind and sprinting as fast as I could. I left any unneeded idle thoughts fly away with the wind. My bullet of love was shooting directly towards where Matsuda was. I cut directly through the central plaza and arrived at the East District. I continued pushing past the other students and practically dived towards the biology building. My throat was dry and felt painful. In an instant I was leaping up the stairs. My breathing was erratic and heavy. I continued to push down my thoughts like how much my throat hurt or how much I'd like to take a rest out of my mind and kept sprinting. As soon as I arrived at the lab, I didn't bother to knock on the door. Instead, I threw it open. Matsuda! I screamed with my remaining strength. A short high school boy in the middle of the room straightened up in surprise and began trembling. His eyes were wide in surprise and turned to me. He was completely rigid and frozen. Somehow, he doesn't look familiar at all. Come to think of it, my heart isn't racing or beating any harder than usual. Could it be... You're not Matsuda? That's not a clear answer. Which do you mean? I ended up yelling louder than I should have, but it was because I was still panting. I meant I'm not him by... Then where's Matsuda? I quickly looked around the lab. God damn it, there's no one else here. He's out now, probably. That's... If you looked, you'd know. I roared back at him. I was at my wit's end. Ah, come on. I felt my stamina rapidly disappear and fell to my knees. Of all the times he could disappear! Where did he go? I continued ranting while I sat on my knees. The young man ran over to me. It's fine. You shouldn't worry so much. I'm sure he'll be back soon. He looked down at me. Why was he so worried about me? He looked at me with such concerned eyes. Or maybe they were the opposite of worried. Maybe they were... Actually, you're a little suspicious, I started. Huh? Or is your personality just like that? I mean, maybe you're the kind of person that stares at a clearly distraught high school girl's... Eep! Keep away! I fell into my bum and tried to scoot away. The boy looked quickly away. Shocked, my skirt flipped up, and more of my thighs were exposed. Eek! I patted down my skirt. The boy was still looking away with his face bright red and spoke up. I didn't do that. You seemed worried, so all I could do was talk to you. You liar! This is the first time we've met. I'm a complete stranger. It's weird to be concerned for someone you've never met before. I bet you just have some ulterior motive or secret intention or an evil plan or something. Eh? The atmosphere suddenly changed to a more serious tone. A complete stranger? He turned and looked straight at me, surprised. Ah, that reaction. So then... Huh? Have you met me before by any chance? As I said that, the boy only looked more surprised, but only for a moment. He quickly changed his expression to a more formal one. My name is... Makoto Naegi, he said, suddenly introducing himself. Ah, it's a pleasure. As I replied, my line of sight dropped down to Ryoko Odanashi's memory notebook. Obviously, his name didn't sound familiar to me at all, but I checked for any sign of his name in my notebook. His name wasn't anywhere in there. So then, we haven't met before. I sent him a confused look. He returned a puzzled expression. His reactions were just becoming more and more suspicious. No matter what he says, this guy is definitely a pervert. I held my notebook in one hand, stood up, and questioned him further. So why are you a student at this school? Eh? Huh? Don't have a reason? He really was suspicious after all. I stared at him, squinting my eyes. No, there's a reason, it's just, I wouldn't call it special. As his sentence fell apart, he looked away. He was just becoming more and more suspicious. I continued to squint my eyes. I get it. The boy nodded reluctantly. It seemed like he finally decided to talk. Since I'm particularly lucky... Excuse me? So I'm super high school level good luck. Super high school level good luck? There seemed to be one underlying problem I was pretty anxious to learn about. So, you're saying your talent is good luck? I don't really get it either, but that's what the school told me. Every year, one person is chosen from a nationwide lottery of ordinary high school students. That student is entered into the school under the title of Super High School Level Good Luck. So by chance, it turns out I was the winner. Somehow. That's kind of a jip. Yeah, it really is, isn't it? Naegi seemed just as troubled over it as I. Anyway, his innocence was becoming more and more apparent. However, I still had no reason to believe him. It's much easier to just accept it as it was, though I'm not what you would call a loose woman. So, what is Mr. Super High School Level Good Luck doing in this lab? Tell me, are you an acquaintance of Matsuda? No lies. Well... Naegi pulled something out of his uniform pocket. It was something that appeared to be a thin smartphone. Yasuke Matsuda dropped this. It's always a hassle when someone loses something, so I thought I'd give it back to him. What is that? I've never seen it before. I'm sure this isn't your first time seeing it. Look, it's an electronic student handbook. Naegi explained that this electronic student handbook was only given out to students from the main school. It's a high-tech piece of equipment with a variety of uses, as well as just acting as a student's ID. If a student doesn't present it, they lose access to some facilities. I found this by a bush in the courtyard. It's an inconvenience to lose this, so I thought I should come here so I could pass it back to him as quickly as possible. But he doesn't seem to be here. What? So then, does that mean Naegi is... It's no good. I can't do it. What? I can't say sorry to you for saying you were suspicious. You're only pretending to be a nice guy. I'm not suspicious. He quickly shook his head. I'm not pretending to be nice or anything either. I just came here to give back Matsuda's lost item. That's really all there is to it. Really? Really? Well then, I suppose whether or not there's anything more to this, I'll just have to believe him for now. Fine. I see. You believe me now? Naegi breathed a sigh of relief as he laid his hand on his chest. I turned to the boy. I pointed my index finger towards him. With the momentum, it made a stiffening sound effect like the ones you read in a manga. What you said was pretty misleading. You should have said from the very start that you weren't suspicious. Huh? Sorry. I don't know why he was suddenly saying sorry, but he had an apologetic expression on his face. But, you know, I guess that makes you unlucky. I mean, coming all the way here to return a lost item only to find he wasn't there. I shouldn't be saying unlucky considering you're Mr. Super High School level good luck himself. No, I'm used to this bad luck now, Naegi said, letting another bitter expression appear on his face. Claiming to be Super High School level good luck, then saying he's used to bad luck. Somehow it seems like he really has an unreliable talent. What a strange guy. He's strange. I don't think I could find a word that suited him more than that. That's it. He's just a strange guy. He's such an ordinarily ordinary guy. He's strange. According to my notebook, all students at Hope's Peak Academy are motivated and look towards the future. They are highly competitive and overflowing with ambition. They're brimming with hope. If it were me in his situation, I'd end up feeling bad. I guess. But it didn't seem to be the case with him. That might be the reason why I think he's so strange. Naegi suddenly interrupted my train of thought. But if that's true... Without realizing it, I asked him to repeat himself. If what's true? It's nothing. It's not important, he replied hurriedly. It seems like he was just talking to himself earlier. If it's not important, then you can tell me. What do you mean by if that's true? I ended up responding with an uncharacteristically strong tone of voice. Somehow, this guy's entire nature and attitude makes him strange. Hey, tell me already. If it's not important, then you should tell me. I'm right, aren't I? Hurry up and reply. Okay. You should only reply with okay once. I'm not your teacher. I only said it once, didn't I? Huh? Really? I've already forgotten. Whatever. Just hurry up and tell me. If you don't tell me already, I'll end up forgetting what it is you're telling me. Well, you see, I've only heard a rumor, so I'm not sure if I can believe it, but I thought it might be true. A rumor? I once again raised my finger towards him, pointing it only a few centimeters away from his forehead. Was it a rumor about me? I won't stand for any awful rumors out there tainting my good name. No, it's nothing like that. So then, what sort of rumor is it? It's... Naegi looked away from me before hesitantly continuing. The rumor said there's a student that became forgetful. Became... forgetful? Somehow I couldn't say any more. Any knowledge of stringing a sentence together had mysteriously disappeared. I was planning to ask him if he knew me before I became forgetful. Ah! I suddenly raised my voice. I shuddered as if I had been hit by a thunderbolt. What's wrong? Naegi turned to me again with a worried expression. I quickly opened Ryoko Odanashi's memory notebook again and flipped through the pages, and flipped and flipped and flipped. I saw a light that blinded my eyes for a moment. There was an explosion. The memories in my notebook in a flash of inspiration collided together and caused a violent chemical reaction. Sandwiched in my notebook was a single letter. Dear super high school level idiotic forgetful girl, I'm the one who took all your precious past memories that you so carefully wrote down. They're filled to the brim with memories of that Yasuke Matsuda. The past carries a lot of weight, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Am I right? It does. Hey, earlier you said a student had become forgetful, didn't you? I was overtaken by an immense excitement as I stood up. So then, the students here know about me before I became forgetful? You too, right? You also knew me before I was forgetful. Speak up! Calm down. Naegi desperately tried to settle me down. I don't really know, but it seems like it was due to some sort of illness, but I wasn't really paying too much attention, since I'm not really all that good at talking to people. It's fine, just hurry up and tell me. Did you know me before I was forgetful? Did you? Well, that's... Go on. Yeah. He finally gave a small nod. I knew it, I confirmed to myself. The students at this school knew me before I had become forgetful. That means I had become forgetful after coming to this school. So then, what about that blackmail Junko Enoshima had written to me about my past memories? Did I ever really have such an important memory notebook? No, maybe it was all just a trap so she could get me to cooperate with her. In other words, a lie. So then, what else did she say? Let's see. She told me she killed someone in the Central Plaza. She also told me that I had to kill Matsuda. In the first place, does a person like Junko Enoshima even exist? As my thoughts circled through my head, I tried to remain focused on the notebook. Lie and Junko Enoshima were the two key phrases that were becoming more apparent. The words written on the page started to swirl around my mind. They gradually grew faster, swirling, turning, circling. They mixed and mingled together. For some reason, the depths of my head began to tingle. It was a strange tingling feeling. This sensation is... Huh? I feel like I'm remembering something. Hey. An annoying voice came pounding into my thoughts. It was Naegi's voice. He didn't seem bothered by anything. I stopped concentrating on my notebook. I think I can almost remember it. Hey. Shut up. Hey. Come on, I'm trying to concentrate here. Hey. Would you shut up already? I shouted at him and raised my face from my notebook. I froze. I saw an unfamiliar man standing in front of us. Eh? Who is that? He grabbed Naegi's shoulders. He wore an unfamiliar school uniform and had unfamiliar long hair. His pitch black silhouette was vastly different to his ghostly white face. Piercing eyes, similar to a reptile's, had been carved into his face. Our eyes met for a brief moment. A siren inside my head rang out, informing me of the dire emergency. I felt like I was having a heart attack as I felt my chest pound faster. Hey. Naegi's face looked shocked. His entire body had gone stiff and he opened his mouth. He came in after us. Do you know him? If you do, by chance, know him, could you do me a favor and tell him to let go of me? Unfortunately, it seems like I've got no idea of who he is, I answered him. Oi, what was that? The strange man growled in a low voice. Don't tell me you've forgotten me already. That's a little harsh, isn't it? You really do know him? Naegi asked in a puzzled voice. The man's eyes drifted down to him suspiciously. Whether we have met before, or whether it is simply fate, neither are of any concern to you. You've just been caught up in it all. In the end, you just have bad luck. I quickly dropped my line of sight to my notebook and looked for any memories about this stranger. There was only one person who came to mind. Could you be Ishiki Madurai? That's right. Later that night in the Central Plaza, I, Madurai, was killed by my own target. Killed? By your own target? Despite what he said, he looked completely uninjured to me. I am immortal. Eh? The man sensed my doubts. He smiled broadly and chuckled strangely. Immortal? What is this? A fantasy-based novel? You're not being serious, are you?
You're sure about that?
What do you mean?
I'm truly immortal. If I were not, I would be unable to explain how I am now uninjured.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but how did you just change the genre to something like a war-based game? Can I speak for a moment? Naegi cut in. The guy who came in after us, Madarai, was it? If you're a Madarai, you couldn't mean you're Madarai from the student council? Eh? Student council? I said without thinking. Somehow, I could not see this creepy man dressed in all black in the student council.
I see. The boy knows.
Madarai grimaced and closed his eyes before murmuring something.
That's right. I am a survivor from the student council.
Survivor?
You're still pretending to be innocent after so long?
Madarai opened his eyes and stared at me carefully.
It's because of that incident all this happened. That incident is the reason behind the state of the student council now. I had luckily escaped with my life, but everyone else had.
No, that's not it. Madarai shook his head, as if trying to disprove his own words.
Perhaps it's wrong for me to say I was lucky I survived. It's more correct to say I simply remained alive. Yes, that's it. I luckily remained alive. I was not even given the chance to fight, and for that, I shall not just forgive them. I will absolutely not forgive them stealing my chance to protect the student council. Who was it? Who did it?
Madarai spat out as he clenched his hands around Naegi's shoulders. The boy's face distorted with pain, but he still attempted to object, despite his discomfort. Excuse me. I don't really know the details, but I understand you feel angry about what happened to the student council. And I understand that you hate the person who did this, but I think it might be good to instead consider rebuilding the student council before anything else.
Rebuild it? Me?
Madarai scoffed.
Nah. In the first place, why do you even think someone like me belongs in the student council?
Eh?
I was only elected so the other members would be able to relax. After all, I'm only the super high school level bodyguard. I did what I could for the student council, in the past, now, and forever. I am just a protector, that's all.
I heard Madarai grind his teeth. His voice was filled with bitter hatred.
During that time of emergency, I was not fit to help them. I wasn't even a target during the incident. Perhaps the criminal did not consider me to be a member of the student council. Can you even imagine how humiliating this has been for me? I wasn't even given a chance to utilize my own talent. The feeling I had from having my own talent trampled on was... Boy, you bastards better be imagining what it felt like so you can relate.
Madarai gripped Naegi's shoulders even more tightly. The pain the young man felt only increased, and he yelled out,
Now, I can only protect the remaining dignity of the student council. It will not end until I've atoned for the student council. I must confront it. That's why I must exact revenge. I am no longer able to slack off. I am willing to do anything.
The man's eyes were stained red, not focusing on anything anymore. In any case, the man seemed completely settled on the idea of pushing his point. I don't know anything about what happened. I ended up trying to excuse myself for whatever actions I did. I felt an overwhelming fear come over me as I desperately tried to make an excuse to run away. I don't have anything to do with the student council or know anything about any incidents that happened or anything dangerous of that sort at all. I'm just an innocent bystander.
As if.
Madarai disagreed. He sounded like he was making a death threat to his worst enemy.
We talked about it earlier. You know all about that incident.
I really don't know anything about it. If you think I'm lying, then please look at this notebook. I opened Ryoko Odanashi's memory notebook and waved it in front of Madarai. I haven't written anything in here about it. This is my proof. I don't know anything about it and I have nothing to do with it.
Would you cut the crap already?
A voice overflowing with fury pierced through my notebook to me.
That notebook of yours doesn't prove anything. Why are you hiding the truth? Are you the criminal's apprentice? Can't talk about it? Or maybe you're really...
I said I have nothing to do with it! I suddenly screamed at him. I instantly regretted doing so. I only added fuel to the fire. I thought he'd be really angry at me, but it seems like my prediction was way off the mark. In fact, his face was surprisingly blank. His emotions had flatlined. He didn't even blink. Any concept of time around the man had come to a complete stop. Naegi sensed Madarai's malice and looked behind him timidly.
Come to think of it, I haven't heard this boy's name yet, have I?
He remained expressionless, only his mouth moving. I'm Makoto Naegi. Hearing that, Madarai laughed softly and leaned down to speak in Naegi's ear.
Say, Naegi, were you listening to what I was saying before?
Huh? Madarai suddenly released Naegi's shoulders, only to place both of his hands on either side of Naegi's head. Ah! Naegi's face instantly morphed into a terrified expression.
I said earlier, didn't I? I am willing to do anything for vengeance.
Madarai looked like a demon as he opened his mouth. He smiled and laughed, his voice full of poisonous venom. This is bad. That guy is incredibly dangerous. Somehow, I was only left with the ability to shiver and tremble like a frightened little bunny. I have no choice but to make a run for it. And quick!
You're not thinking of running, are you?
Eh? My foot suddenly stopped in midair.
If you do that, what do you think will happen to this boy here?
Eh? Eh? As I heard this, Naegi's face changed from blue to white. Wow, what a colorful face he has.
This is the last warning you get, so watch yourself. If you don't obey me, this guy's head will be tragically crushed in an unfortunate accident.
What the? I could only feel confused. Both of them looked at me. Say something. Madarai's stare intimidated me, like he was about to do something reckless. Help me, Naegi's eyes pleaded to me. Intimidating eyes and pleading eyes. Both were entirely focused on me, and... what a bother. It was a bother to go to the hassle of doing either. There's nothing I would really be able to do, or wanted to do, I guess. That's why for me this was something that had nothing to do with me. That's right, it has nothing to do with me. Sure, I happened to be swept along with the current, but that's all. I wasn't involved with the creation of this situation at all. I don't even know anything about what happened. That's why it has nothing to do with me, 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 nothing to do with me. I mumbled quietly, reminding the people in front of me, as well as just myself. I was mumbling my magical enchantment.
Huh?
Huh? Having heard that, both Madarai and Naegi looked at me with vacant expressions.
What do you mean it has nothing to do with you?
A confused Madarai raised his voice.
There's no way you're not involved. After all, it's your fault this boy here has been caught up in all this.
You're wrong, I found myself replying flatly. I'm not the reason as to why he has become involved in this whole thing. He got himself involved. It's not my fault he has god-awful luck. In the end, I really have nothing to do with this. Hey, wait a... As Naegi tried to interrupt me, I raised my voice to continue my argument. It's a shame, but it's obvious Naegi has no luck at all, I said in the calmest tone I could muster. He just has an insane power to take and give life because of his complete lack of luck. So, I think you have no choice but to give up. Anyway, no matter what the case is, I've already forgotten. After all, I forget everything sooner or later, with the exception of Matsuda. So, as far as I see it, there's not really much out there that actually does have anything to do with me. I continued to mutter those words to myself. In all truth, I really had nothing to do with it. Then, I'll forget that too. My brief meeting with Naegi, the information he knew, I'll forget that as well. There's no reason for me to feel bad about him. So that's why I always say this has nothing to do with me.
Have you decided what you're going to do?
I don't know. I keep telling you this has nothing to do with me. I answered blankly.
Is that so? I see.
Matarai bared his teeth, murmuring in a low voice.
I hope you're prepared to see the extent of my resolution.
There really are strange people who are ready to go as far as to kill another human in order to prove their point. It's insane to think he would accomplish anything by killing Naegi. Naegi really doesn't have any luck. He's gotten himself into a hostage situation after all.
This is the end.
Matarai gripped Naegi's skull with all the strength in his hands and... You're wrong! A voice resounded throughout the room that seemed to dissolve the tension in the air. A crazy person ran into the lab. The figure appeared to slide towards Matarai and hammered the back of their fist into the man's nose, making it bend to a strange angle. Matarai squinted his eyes and shut it in pain. He seemed to lose sight of his attacker as he fell down. After giving Matarai's chest a prod, the stranger turned to Naegi and grasped his head in their hands before moving to pick Naegi up. They placed him gently on top of the bed and turned around. Matarai flew towards him. The stranger gracefully roundhouse kicked and hit Matarai square on the chin. The blow completely smashed his key point and rocked his head violently. He fell to the ground, having no energy left. By the way, this scene I just witnessed, it passed in the blink of an eye. The stranger skillfully landed without making a sound after they finished their kick. Their skirt gently floated down. Oh, there is she? Ikusaba! Naegi called out from the bed in relief. Ikusaba. It seems like that is this girl's name. Of course, this is the first time I've heard her name. Naegi got up from the bed and ran hurriedly to the girl. Thank you, Ikusaba. Thank you so much, he said, thanking her over and over. However, the girl remained completely calm and composed in response. Well, I say calm and composed, but I think it's more like she just didn't feel anything. I was only helping my classmate, she mumbled to herself. Stubbornly, Ikusaba avoided his gaze. But it's odd. Looking at her now, you wouldn't guess she had just been fighting brilliantly only a few moments beforehand. Ah, but Ikusaba, why are you here? I must admit, I was wondering the same thing. Usually it's only Matsuda in this lab. That's what I had written down in my notes. Also, it seems like he's absent today, but he has been getting a multitude of visitors. Maybe he's been working on something big? Oh, Ikusaba raised her voice slightly, but it was barely above a whisper. I listened carefully. I was just passing by? Eh? Why'd you phrase it as a question? I asked without thinking. Ikusaba, you haven't changed one bit, Naegi interrupted. So then, you were just passing by when you came across what was happening, and you came to save us, right? Ikusaba nodded in response. That's it. And you saved me. I was getting worried for a moment there. Thank you, Ikusaba. Thank you so much. Naegi sighed a breath of relief and continued to repeat his sincere thanks, much to Ikusaba's embarrassment. I was really lucky. You were just passing by. I was so lucky. Luck. Somehow that was how we were saved. Pure luck. But that is only in a manner of speaking. All thanks to such a strong person who was passing by, we were able to escape from such a predicament, but this luck was really convenient and good. On the other hand, though, Matarai's actions were inconvenient to say the least. Ah, so this is super high school level good luck? But if it is luck, I can't help but feel that it was all because that we were caught up in all this. Excuse me. Eh? I suddenly realized Ikusaba was standing right in front of me. Awababa! I stepped back without thinking. Now that I think about it, did I really notice her? Did she teleport? For some reason, Ikusaba remained silent. I waited for her to show any signs of opening her mouth to speak, but I ended up giving in and raising my own voice. Nice to meet you. Thank you very much for earlier. Eh? Naegi raised his voice in surprise. He walked over to us, invading our line of sight as he blinked in surprise. But what was so surprising? I'm Mukuro Ikusaba. I tilted my head to the side slightly in response. Ikusaba raised her voice a little more. I'm the super high school level soldier from the 78th batch. Nice to meet you. Without even blinking, she moved her mouth as little as possible as she introduced herself. The moment she finished, she returned to utter silence. Speaking honestly, she seemed like a quiet girl by nature. Then again, she is a super high school level soldier. She probably acts like this around everyone. Perhaps every soldier is like this? However, I haven't met any members of the military before, so I have no way of knowing. I just don't know. I was in silence with her. Even Naegi was silent, but he was as puzzled as before. Matarai, still foaming at the mouth, was, of course, silent too. Everyone was silent. An awkward silence. But the awkwardness didn't last long. After some time, I forgot about the awkward silence. Instead, another thought wandered into my mind. Ah, now that I think about it, Matsuda isn't here. That's right, the only thing I can ever remember is Matsuda. I wonder if Matsuda is on an errand. I want to see him soon. I hope he comes back quickly. My thoughts continued as I stared into space and... The girl crouched down suddenly. I think her name was Ikusaba. What's wrong? The surprised boy, Naegi, I think, asked. The girl replied in a warning tone. Someone's there. The atmosphere of the lab became much more tense. Eh? Hiding? Sorry for interrupting, but I wasn't trying to hide. You shouldn't spread rumors about people. A voice rose, and everyone instinctively looked around the lab. Huh? But no matter how hard we looked, there wasn't anyone there. No, I'm here. Look, over here. Eh? Where? Feeling somewhat panicked, I continued looking around the room relentlessly. Over there, Naegi pointed out. Ikusaba walked to the laboratory door. Ah, I noticed a little later than the others. In front of the door stood a boy with a pure, innocent face. Oh, you finally noticed me? The boy's face lacked any distinctive features. His voice also had a complete lack of any unique tones. It took you a little while, but you noticed me in the end. Well, it's my talent's fault, so it can't be helped. I'll forgive you. Why is there a kid here? Naegi suddenly said, taken aback by the boy. Hey, you shouldn't treat me like a kid. I don't think it's rare to see someone with a baby face, but I'm a meritorious high school student at Hope's Peak Academy. I even went through the trouble of using a difficult word, like meritorious. Oh, what's all this then? The boy's line of sight fell to where Matarai was. Oh my. Looks like you've gotten yourself into quite a mess. Ah, you're wrong about that. Naegi quickly ran in between the boy and Matarai, trying to obstruct his view. How to put it? It might look like a slight accident, but... The boy patted his hand on Naegi's shoulder. Ah, don't fret. There's no need to make excuses around me. I'm actually also investigating this case. Isn't that right, big sis? Eh? Despite having the reins of his great story handed over to me, I didn't remember anything about it at all. I wasn't able to muster anything more than, I guess so, and tilt my head to the side. Huh? Don't tell me. You've forgotten about me again? He folded his arms and nodded happily. Well, I'm used to people forgetting who I am, so it's fine. It's just another side effect of my talent. Look, I said I have no presence, didn't I? People don't notice me very often, and they say they forgot about me a lot. But you know, big sis? The boy started rubbing his hands and raised his voice again. I have a request that this time, when I say my name, you remember it. My name is Yuto Kamishiro. I'm a super high school level spy from the 77th batch. Wait a second, I protested as the boy came closer to me. I opened up Ryoko Odanashi's memory notebook and tried to quickly find any memories mentioning the boy. Ah, I got it. Kamishiro. I remember you. Kamishiro with absolutely no unique features whatsoever. I wouldn't say none, murmured Ikusaba with a neutral expression. He looks like a doll made by someone with the creativeness of a politician. He gives off bad vibes. I didn't think she was the type to say things so bluntly. Kamishiro glared at Ikusaba for a moment before returning his stare to me, and then said in a very over-the-top voice, Well then, it's really awful that you're so forgetful, big sis. When you first told me I thought you were joking, I almost laughed. Ha 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 ha. Well, wait, that isn't something you should confess in front of a person. Having heard him, Naegi quickly interjected, but Kamishiro paid him no mind. I don't need to be careful. I always thought being careful was for losers, but I don't think you have any experience with that, do you, big bro? You see, I understand completely. Kamishiro slipped past Naegi and stood in front of me and made sure we were face to face before saying any more. You really are amazingly forgetful. Saying such ditzy things don't really fit you, but I like it. Actually, there are a lot of girls out there who have ditzy personalities now that I think about it. In fact, my equipment down below gets a little harder just thinking about them. We all blinked in surprise. The culprit was, of course, the blunt, explicit adult joke. Well, in any case, she's my client,
Yikes,
so I'm
yikes.
genuinely relieved to see nothing happen to her. But in the end, Kamishiro turned his line of sight back to Madurai. No matter how much I think about it, I can't decide if this is a bad situation or not. I thought it really was. You know, they say my personality is warm and friendly enough to melt all the ice cream in a convenience store, though I suppose something like that is more of a pet peeve to some. I honestly can't make sense of this last bit. I think maybe it was overkill. Naegi once again began to apologize about the situation. How to put it? Perhaps it's better to say it was self-defense. That's not what I meant, Kamishiro said, hitting him lightly. He slowly walked over to Madurai's body and mumbled to himself. Honestly, talk about a worst-case scenario. Well, it won't solve anything anyhow. But when he wakes up, will you resort to violence again? What will you do? You can't just leave him here now, can you? Well, if we all go to the security department and explained... We can't do that, big bro. He stared at Naegi, analyzing him. You do know I came all the way here just so I could have an important talk to Big Sis, my client. You understand? It's an important talk, got it? What I'm trying to say is we're too busy. But... Naegi was completely overpowered by Kamishiro's icy cold stare. Unexpectedly, a voice sounded throughout the room. I'll do something about it. Everyone turned to look at Ikusaba. The girl quickly lowered her gaze to the ground and repeated herself. I'll do something about it. And can you do it by yourself? Kamishiro asked, drawing closer to her. The girl nodded. The heck? Do you even understand me? The next moment, Kamishiro's eyes sparkled brightly. I see. I get it now. You can take care of this all by yourself? Really hearing that puts my mind at ease. Ah, by the way, it would be better not to mention this to the security department, since it'll be difficult to deal with them. Wait a second, Naegi interrupted him again. If we don't properly explain the situation, Ikusaba will be blamed. Huh? Kamishiro remained staring intently at Naegi. I couldn't imagine his young face anymore and felt myself get hot. Naegi remained dead silent. You still don't get me even though I've said it 1,000,000 times already? Big Sis and I are busy. We have no time to help you clear this up. You side characters can go ahead and do it without our permission. In the first place, since you are the guys who resorted to such a violent solution, it makes you the bad guys. If it were me, I would have done a much better job. He continued to prattle on about his self-importance. Naegi could find any words to reply with, but somehow he had not yet lost his head. Ikusaba murmured a little more. It's okay. I'll do something about it, so... Ikusaba! It's fine. With a short sentence, Ikusaba managed to silence the worrying Naegi. Kamishiro and I turned to one another and he muttered, It might be good to head off now. Well then, it's decided! Kamishiro had an innocent smile on his face and he clapped his hands happily. Leave the job to Big Sis over there. Idiotic Big Sis and I are gonna go somewhere else. Kamishiro grabbed my hand with a quick, Yay, let's go! He started acting like a child, dragging his poor parents to the toy store. Wait a mo... It's fine. You want to go back to your peaceful old life, don't you, Big Sis? So you should just quiet down and come with me. Kamishiro continued dragging me along behind him until we reached the door of the lab. I looked back hopelessly. The ever-expressionless Ikusaba and Naegi, looking worried again, stood up. Naegi took a single step. He had a look of determination. He quickly became startled, however. Ikusaba had laid her hand on his shoulder. He looked back to her. She warned him and nodded softly. Seeing that Naegi seemed to give in, relaxing his shoulders. He turned to look at me once more, the two figures disappearing in the distance. Now then, let's move on and do our best! The moment we entered the hallway, Kamishiro excitedly cheered, "Let's solve your problem!" Kamishiro continued to walk, leaving me behind. "Ah, wait for me," I called out as I hurriedly ran after him, but my mind was drifting elsewhere. I was thinking about Naegi looking at me for that last moment. His eyes sent me a feeling of burning unease. The individual named Makoto Naegi gave me a sense of unreliability and had a weak demeanor, but in the depths of his eyes at that moment, there was an incredible strength from his very core that shook all my previous preconceptions of who this person was. He looked at me with a dazzling aura. Whether there was a problem, whether he had an unbeatable enemy, he always would have a strength so strong he could never give up. Such an unforeseeable person looked straight at me with those eyes. I don't understand how I can feel this way around such a strange, mysterious force. However, I doubt I'll ever need to know. After all, he has nothing to do with me. But that's not just a reason I'm using because it suits me. I just feel as though he basically has nothing to do with me. For example, as if we were in alternate dimensions, surely Naegi's story and my own story will never cross paths again. In conclusion, we have nothing to do with each other. I felt like that for some reason. So I'll forget that boy with a reason. That was what I had concluded as I walked down the biology building hallways. In fact, in just a matter of minutes, I completely forgot of his existence. Chapter 4. Red Eyes. The whites of the eyes seemed almost painted red. The eyes turned towards their companion. Yasuke Matsuda muttered a question. "How long have you been conscious?" After blinking for a strangely long time, the person on the bed, Super High School level Student Council President, Soshun Murasame, opened his mouth slowly. His lips were parched and made a dry sound as he opened his mouth. "Always." His voice was quiet and hoarse. He sounded like a completely different person in comparison to before. "So that's how it's been." Matsuda let a grin creep into his expression. He turned to his friend, showing a friendly smile. "But don't you think it's stupid to trick me like that?" However, Murasame did not make a sound. His eyes showed no emotion as he stared at Matsuda. Matsuda continued in his joking tone to help calm the tense atmosphere. "It must have taken a lot of acting on your part. Your actual physiological symptoms and echoes of such have almost completely disappeared. Yet you were easily able to cease being a normal person. We wouldn't have been in this situation had I not seen through your act."
Why did you come?
But his reply came with a violent attitude. As if giving up, Matsuda's expression returned to a more sober look. "You said that earlier. You asked those ancient artifacts from the steering committee that. I want you to find out whether you really woke up or not." In response, Murasame only looked away, redirecting his attention to the ceiling and blinking without meaning. "To be honest, even I'm having my doubts." Matsuda licked his dry lips before continuing. "What if
The way that
I
this
told those
brush
people
looks
that you're awake?"
on
Murasame
top
remained silent to Matsuda's
makes it look
questioning.
like it's a rainbow.
Like a remote-controlled car with a flat battery,
Nice.
his reactions were slow and sluggish at best. "Maybe it isn't just acting." Matsuda breathed out a deep sigh. He just answered his own question. "Still, I'm sure the news will surprise them. After that, I already guessed what would happen. Didn't they used to say when people needed to prepare for the worst, desperate times call for desperate measures? At the moment, they're relying entirely on influential people outside the school to cover up this incident." Matsuda looked away from Murasame and slowly gazed at his surroundings. Instead of looking for some kind of reaction from Murasame, he turned to the surrounding electronic equipment, as if trying to communicate with it. "After all, they can't afford to make up excuses for this, like allowing a known threat into the general public. They can't just pretend there's no danger. There are also people who say a ruthless person cannot be a good researcher. Well, not that it matters. It depends on how much talent there is.
Matsuda stayed talkative, and Murasame didn't even shift an eyebrow. Soshin Murasame used to be the kind of person who would at least pretend to laugh no matter how bad the joke was. It seemed like that man was no longer there.
The issue isn't that he's feeling depressed.
As Matsuda sighed, he brushed his hair out of his face. His long, narrow eyes looked sharply at Murasame.
Oi, Murasame. This isn't a bargaining point, but I do want to tell you. I'm saying this to make sure you understand. The school's intentions and the steering committee's intentions are very different. To be truthful, I don't care what those guys think. I just want to know what the hell is happening at this school. So then I'm just pretending.
Murasame suddenly opened his mouth. Matsuda saw him smile, or maybe he imagined it. In the next moment, any trace of it had completely disappeared. The reaction he just gave him proved that the good person was still there.
There might be some more to this.
Matsuda took off his jacket and untucked his worn-out white shirt, returning to his more familiar appearance. It wasn't because he had become more relaxed. If anything, it was just the opposite. It felt more like he was just getting down to business.
I get it. I don't think you'll be able to escape by just using this act. Even though you're in this state, you're still worried about this school, and you're willing to fight for it? That's why you're using this act? So you can escape from the eyes of the steering committee?
Matsuda sat down on the bed and leaned in to say something.
If I were you, I'd be trying to get used to this kind of power. I'll protect you if I have to. Once I give my false report to those guys, you might even be able to fight along with them. Since it's not always that bad to fight alongside the bad guys.
Matsuda once again asked how Murasame's condition was, only to see Murasame would not reply or react.
No matter what the force behind it is, I still don't know very much about the incident. That's why I need you to survive and explain it to me, but...
Murasame lowered his eyelids slightly. At the very least, from what Matsuda could gather, his slight movement meant refusal. Matsuda thought this would be the case, but he had a more pressing question. Though he didn't particularly want to hear the answer which may be given, because it was something he had been told before.
The culprit is Izuru Kamakura, correct?
That was his question.
I heard about it from the staff members. The name of the person who survived the incident and then went missing afterwards is called Izuru Kamakura. But does that person really exist?
After a short silence, Murasame finally opened his mouth. Izuru Kamakura killed the student council. His voice was hoarse and unused, but he conveyed his message.
So then, Izuru Kamakura is real?
Matsuda listened for confirmation, however Murasame didn't reply. His mouth remained open, stiff and unmoving.
Oi, Murasame.
Matsuda called out, urging him on. The boy's mouth finally moved again. Whatever. He finished saying only that. Matsuda sensed something from his word.
So then, that doesn't matter.
There was no sense of crisis in the Hope's Peak Academy Murasame held on to. So then, it isn't a known fact whether Izuru Kamakura is the culprit behind the incident or not. Matsuda's thoughts went along the lines of,
that must be it.
There was one more thing Matsuda needed to hear above all else, he'd realized. He breathed in heavily, and before giving himself a chance to hesitate, he asked his question.
What about Junko Enoshima? What connection does she have to the incident?
Murasame closed his eyes. It was a blink that seemed to last forever. The next moment he opened his eyes again. His face was unfamiliar. Tears were threatening to spill from his open eyes. He made a gritting sound with his teeth bared. His crazed expression turned into one of pure exhaustion. Then Matsuda realized. The person named Soshin Murasame was no longer there. The man they called Super High School Level Student Council President was completely gone. The boy who was familiar to him had met his end. I. That thing opened its mouth painfully wide. He began to spit out words that did not even sound like words. I must kill. I must kill. I must kill? Who? Who are you talking about? Matsuda placed his hand onto that thing's bedside and looked down to him as he asked. Huge, red, sore eyes turned towards Matsuda briefly. Junko Enoshima. Junko Enoshima. The inside of his body was beaten by something as he was overtaken by shock. It was the beating of his own heart. The harsh impact it had caused Matsuda to lose his own voice. Suddenly, that thing screamed out. Blood rushed to his face, flushing it to a dark red, making him look like a demon. Junko Enoshima, Junko Enoshima, Junko Enoshima, Junko Enoshima, Junko Enoshima, Junko Enoshima, Junko Enoshima. That thing continued to scream horribly, sounding like a broken record. Kill, 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 kill! He kept screaming and yelling. Over and over again he continued to scream. As that thing screamed with his entire body, Matsuda began to feel a little cold. It wasn't that he was composed, that feeling was lost. It was as if his body temperature itself had dropped. He already understood everything. He already understood everything about the worst, largest incident in Hope's Peak Academy's history. Soshin Murasame's true enemy, and Hope's Peak Academy's true enemy, was most likely Junko Enoshima. That was his conclusion. He had already guessed it as the worst case scenario. Matsuda had no choice but to establish his despair-inducing resolve. So then, I'm out of options. I passed the point of no return a long time ago. Something around his lower abdomen began to bubble and boil. Still hot, his whole body became energetic. Matsuda turned to Murasame. Hey, I said earlier that I'd protect you if I had to, didn't I? He spoke in a calm tone of voice. But there's also someone else I have to protect at all costs. They're hopeless if I don't protect them. So I've decided I'll sacrifice anything to protect them. As the words left his mouth, they were swallowed by screams. Even so, Matsuda continued to talk. I'm awful. I don't particularly want to think about that. If I forgot the person I care for and they died, that thought is unbearable. So I'll protect them. No matter what happens, I'll protect them. As Matsuda spoke softly, he placed both of his hands around that thing's neck. Kill, 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 kill! Even so, that thing continued to shout out. He didn't seem to understand what was happening. If there's a grudge against me for this, then there's a grudge against me. Matsuda closed his eyes and thought to himself, I don't mean that person. I mean I'll hold a grudge against myself. In the next moment, Matsuda gathered all his power into his hands and squeezed. Finally, the incredibly loud voice, the screams of that thing, had come to a stop. The bed to which he was assigned started to shake with a loud rattling sound. Matsuda was leaning forward, his hair falling in front of his eyes. However, he didn't loosen his grip. Instead, he tightened it. He put all his power into his hands. Quickly, the bed's shaking subsided. The feeling of what his hands were wrapped around disappeared. The feeling of that thing ended. After a while, Matsuda finally opened his eyes again. All the muscles in his body felt exhausted and tense, as if he had become a solid piece of iron. Sweat dripped from his forehead, landing on his long eyelashes. He blankly turned his line of sight towards that thing on top of the bed. The light from those eyes had disappeared. All that was left was a deep darkness. Those eyes held a darkness deeper than the color of darkness itself.
Chapter 5. In one of the East District's cafeterias. Its de facto name is the Third School Cafeteria. Although there are several cafeterias scattered throughout the campus, this one is the most popular by far. Apparently. During noon, it's filled with not only students but also teaching staff lined up in a queue. It seems the secret behind the popularity of this cafeteria is the student they call Super High School Level Cook, who boasts of his own unique recipe. His food isn't governed by genre or common sense, and I hear it's so addictive you can't help but feel like it must contain drugs, but come to think of it, it doesn't really matter since I've forgotten how addictive it is.